In an exclusive interview, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has told Al Jazeera Iran must show that it is giving up its ambitions to possess nuclear weapons. Rubio said there have been talks with Iran, primarily through intermediaries. He says President Donald Trump prefers diplomacy to war. But at the same time, a spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry said his country has only received what he characterized as requests for talks through mediators. He also called the U.S. demands both excessive and maximalist. President Trump has also reiterated his threats to target Iran's energy facilities if a deal is not reached soon. And even though Rubio said diplomacy is underway, he also said Iran would face consequences if the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened. Here's some of what the U.S. Secretary of State told Al Jazeera's Hashim Al-Barra.
There's messages and some direct talks going on between some inside of Iran and the United States, primarily through intermediaries, but there's been some conversation. And I think the president always prefers diplomacy, always prefers an outcome. And we could have done this before. I mean, imagine an Iranian regime who, instead of spending billions of dollars supporting terrorist groups and building up all these weapons, had invested that money into Iran, for the people of Iran, so they wouldn't have water shortages, so their economies would provide opportunities for an incredible people. The people of Iran are incredible people, very resourceful, very entrepreneurial, but it's their regime that's been a problem. And instead, they've chosen to spend the wealth of their country to support Hezbollah and Hamas and Shia militias inside of Iraq, and to try to destabilize Syria when Assad was there, and all over the world to sponsor terrorist plots and build these drones and build these weapons to threaten their neighbors unnecessarily. So we would always welcome a scenario in which Iran was led by people that had a different view of the future and had a different view. And if that opportunity presents itself, we're going to take it.
Well, let's get the view now live from Tehran, where Tohid Asadi is standing by. Tohid, the U.S. Secretary of State and other officials in the Trump administration, they've been saying that the U.S. military operation is going according to plan, and they've also been insisting that talks with Iran are happening through intermediaries. What's the latest you're hearing about all this from Iranian officials?
Well, actually, what we hear from Tehran is quite, in a sense, contradictory to what we hear from the officials in Washington. People in Tehran, I mean, diplomatic sources are saying that right now, direct negotiation with the United States is not on the agenda. And of course, there is a very negative vibe when it comes to even mediated communications, about which the spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ismail Baghai, came out to talk. And he said that the 15-point proposal presented by the Americans through through Pakistan as the mediator has not been welcomed. He called it maximalist, unreasonable, and of course this is just in alignment with other diplomatic and military sources in Iran speaking about the situation. And of course we've got this recent post on his X account from Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister, who in part of that said it's high time to eject U.S. forces across the region. We have to keep in mind that when it comes to potentiality for negotiated settlements, the two sides are poles apart, and there is also this cloud of mistrust when it comes to Iran's vantage point pertaining to approaching the United States, seeing the two times previously over the past 10 months is that they were engaged indeed in a trajectory of diplomatic engagement, while all of a sudden Iran faced a campaign of airstrikes by the Americans and Israelis.
So, Tohid, while there is all this contradictory rhetoric from both the U.S. and Iran when it comes to if negotiations are ongoing or not, the bombardment from the U.S. and Israel targeting Iran continues, not just in Tehran, but also in Isfahan province. What more can you tell us about the most recent strikes?
Yes, Mohammed, this is a very important part of this entirely complicated situation. Iranians are saying that any ceasefire or stopping of the war is conditioned upon the halting of the aggressions by the Americans and Israelis, quote unquote. However, the reality on the ground is quite far from that, as last night we heard sounds of massive explosion in different neighborhoods in the capital, including Hakimiev. And it's very interesting, even after these sounds of explosion, people attended the streets in a sort of pro-state demonstration to express their anger over the continuation of these airstrikes. Tehran also experienced very much similar to the night before a blackout due to attack on the power infrastructure of the country. And of course, as you mentioned, it goes beyond the scope of the capital. We know that in other cities, in areas near Kharg, located in the western parts of the capital, attacks are reported. Several cities in Isfahan, which has been a scene of heavy bombardment over the past few weeks, were also targeted. Bandar Abbas and other cities and Qeshm Island are also witnessing the continued nature of these airstrikes.
All right, that's Tohid Asadi joining us live from Tehran with all the latest. Thanks so much, Tohid.